again, fifth graders, or anyone who might be watching these videos. My name is Kristen. I'm with the Calapooia Watershed Council. I run the field trip program with Albany, Central Lynn, and Harrisburg. And this, as always, is my wonderful assistant. And Nora has an assistant named
Baby.
Today we are here with our second installment of the Urban Ecology video series. Today we're going to be doing a soil infiltration test out here at Simpson Park. Our main focus for the next 2 weeks actually is going to be soil. Today we'll do an infiltration test, and next week Anna Lay will be doing a test on soil ribboning, we call it, where we're testing soil texture. So you have that to look forward to next week. So we're going to go ahead today and we're going to start with our soil infiltration test. It is definitely something that you can do at home, and I will get to that later when we do the test. So the first thing we want to talk about is, why is soil so important to us? Why do we care so much about soil? Why are there whole organizations that are dedicated to keeping soil healthy and clean? Our 5 functions of soil is that they are mediums for plant growth, are recycling nutrients, that's where our plants are getting their nutrients from. They are habitat for critters that live in the soil. Can you think of 1 or 2? I bet there's one that comes to mind right away, our friend the earthworm, which is actually really important for healthy soil. Engineering medium, again, what we're building our houses and our roads and really everything on. And then here we have our system for water supply and purification. So as that water infiltrates through the ground, the soil actually cleans it and also holds it. So it kind of does a double function, both of which are very, very important. So next we're going to get into what is soil. And a lot of times the first thing that comes to mind and gets blurted out is it's dirt, which it is. Soil scientists wouldn't love to hear that. They want to hear you call it soil because it's much more than just dirt. It's made up of 20 or 45% mineral particles that come from rock. 5%, this little sliver of the pie here, is the organic material, the leaves and things that break down, the plants that break down. And then soil is 25% air, which is pretty interesting, and that's because there are spaces between the soil particles. And then 25% water as well. So 50% of our soil is made up of air and water. So it's very important to have room for that air and that water. So now I want to ask you, since we've looked at that pie chart, why is that important? Why does it matter what soil is made up of? Why am I telling you this? And the reason for that is because pore space, where the air and the water are held in the soil, is really important for plant growth. If you're a plant that has roots that want to go down into the soil, you're going to need space in the soil to grow. So if there were not air in there, then these organisms wouldn't be getting enough oxygen. Minerals that's just broken down rock. And then the organic matter, again, it's a small percentage, but it's very, very important. The base of the soil food web. The next thing we're going to want to talk about is how soil is formed. This wonderful way for us to remember what goes into forming soil, and that is to remember the word chlorped, which is a very strange word, but that actually helps me to remember it, that it's so funny. So the CL is climate. That plays a major role into how soil is formed. Organisms as well. There's our friend the earthworm. Relief is also gonna have an impact, as is the parent material. What kind of rock are we breaking down to make that soil? And then of course time. Soil does not form quickly. I want you to think about how long you think it takes soil to form. Let's say an inch of soil. We want to form an inch of soil. So how long do you think that would take? Might it take 5 years? 100 years? 200 years? 1,000 years? 1,000,000 years? What do you think? It takes an inch of soil approximately 500 years to form. And then I want you to think about how quickly that soil can wash away or erode away in a big storm. So let's say there were no plants at all here at Simpson Park. The soil was just bare, and we had waited 500 years and we were old and gray, and our soil had finally formed we had an inch of it, and then there's a big rainstorm, where does that soil go? It's going to be washed off the land, right? It's going to make its way to whatever central body of water we are near, whatever watershed we were in. So the last time at water quality, we were over in the Cox Creek watershed. Over here, or in this area of Simpson Park, the First Lake watershed. So all of this soil would make its way eventually into First Lake, which would cause problems for the fish in First Lake, and it would cause problems on the land because all of our soil that we waited 500 years for would disappear. It's a very, very thin layer over the earth, and it doesn't magically form. So we have to take care of what we have. So now we're gonna play a little bit of trivia. In a cup of soil, if I were to dig up a little measuring cup of soil, 1 cup of soil, how much bacteria do you think that contains? How much bacteria? Little teeny tiny bacteria. How about protozoa, little single-celled organisms? How many of those in a little cup of soil that could fit in the palm of my hand? How many nematodes? What about earthworms? How many earthworms would I have in my hand in my cup of soil? So we have 20 million protozoa in a cup of soil. We have 200 billion, with a B, billion bacteria. 100,000 nematodes will be in there. And then we'll have, on average, less than 1 single earthworm, but chances are you're gonna get the whole earthworm if you dig it up and put it in your hand. So there's a lot of life in the soil. There's a lot of life in the soil. That's another reason why it's so important to take care of, because we don't want to be responsible. Think about in the whole park of Simpson Park, how many different organisms are in the soil. How many different things need to be taken care of, need to be looked out for, need to be thought about in the soil. It's a lot. We're going to talk about right here. This is a good structure of soil. We have our soil particles, lots of space in between them for that water and air to fill up. Healthy soil from the looks of it. Then we have soil that's been compacted. See how there are much smaller spaces in there? So again, lots and lots of big space, so that 25% of this soil can be made up of air and 25 of it can be made up of water. You need a lot of pore space. And in compacted soil, we lose that. Now ask you, what are ways that we compact soil? How does it get squished down like that? How does all the air and the water get forced out of it? Well, there's a path here where there is no grass growing or very little grass growing. It is where everybody walks for the most part, as they walk through Simpson Park, and it's compacted. Plants can't grow. It's a perfect example of why it's important to have very airy, fluffy soil. I have to note to stay on paths when you're walking through the forest or a park or something for that reason. Because yeah, we have this really, really compacted area here, but the rest of the soil is less compact because everybody is walking here. Walking, driving, parking our car, putting heavy things down on the soil can compact it. And when we have compact soil, we don't have plants that grow. We don't have that ability to hold water. We don't have as many organisms that can survive in there. It seems like a simple thing, but it's really, really important to make sure that soil does not get impacted. What happens when we have a parking lot very, very close to a lake? What happens to the soil in that parking lot? What happens to the lake because of it? We're gonna have more compact soil. Compact soil means plants can't grow in there. Plants can't grow in the soil. Plants can't anchor the soil in place and keep it from washing away. Can't keep it from blowing away. So we'll have more erosion. And then what will that do to the lake? What else is going to happen to the ecosystem because we didn't make our parking lot further enough from that lake? So think about that, and I am going to gather my materials and we will get moving on our soil infiltration test. For this activity, you are going to need some supplies. Should be things that you can get your hands on. I have a big metal tube. You don't need this. A big coffee can with the bottom taken off or cut off will work. PVC pipe will work. And we use a certain amount of water, but really for your purposes, you're just going to want to make sure you use something that is open on both ends that you can sort of bang into the ground, and then just use the same amount of water for each test. So I also have a piece of wood, really any sort of hard object, lay over the top of your coffee can or your pipe or whatever you're using so that you can use, I have a mallet, a hammer will work as well. Make sure you have some adult supervision when you're doing this. You're going to use that to sort of force it into the ground. So I have chosen a spot like we talked about earlier where we have compacted soil. I'm here along the path. And I've chosen a spot that has no plants growing. Here we go. It is not easy getting this in there. You want to make sure it's in there enough so that you don't get water leaking out the bottom if you can help it. You're also going to want to use a stopwatch or a phone that has a timer, or keep your eye on it. You want to be able to count minutes and seconds for this. And I'm going to start this as soon as we pour that water in. So I want you to think about how long it's going to take for this to infiltrate into the ground. And while that happens, we're going to leave this because it is probably going to take some time. And we are going to go over to our... What's going on is this water is having a tough time getting into the ground because there's not enough air space in there for it to go. So go ahead.
It's almost done.
It's almost done. We have just a little bit of water left over here. Let's see. We are coming up on 3 minutes. Or I'm sorry, we're coming up on 3.5 minutes. There we have it. 4 minutes and 11 seconds for that water to infiltrate. Okay, so here we are at our second location. You can see we are under a tree. There are lots of plants growing out of the ground here. Seems like a good place for us to do our next session. Okay, here we go again. Oh, I can tell you, this is already going into the ground much, much easier than it was over on the compacted area. Gonna do our timer again. We're gonna time this again. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, 47.91 seconds. That's how long the water took to infiltrate. So now that we have seen how long it took in both places for the water to infiltrate, I want you to think about what that means for the environment. So let's say we had an inch of rain, that water over there under the tree was able to infiltrate into the ground, and the water over here was not. So it would puddle up or it would flow, which would take it right to First Lake. Again, that's going to come back to how compacted soil can influence the health of a water body. And with that, we are all done. thank you for joining me today. If there are questions or there are comments or anything at all, please feel free to email me or check in with our social media and post questions on there. Always happy to help out. Wish you were here with me. I hope that some of you are able to do this test at home. If you do, feel free to send me pictures or let me know what happened or what sites you chose and how you chose them. Just feel free to share if you did this so that we're still kind of all in this together. That is everything, and I look forward to seeing you all again.
Mom, I got your